Let's have a conversation. What's up, everybody? I know that I was actually supposed to do this yesterday, 8 o'clock, and then I was supposed to do it yesterday at 10:30. I'll be honest, yesterday was just not my day. I tried to be ready for 8, and then I tried to be ready for 10:30, and by 10:30, I was KO'd. I was asleep. This live does not have a specific topic. Don't worry, I will still be on live tonight, 8 o'clock p.m. with Tasha to recap The Traders. The Traders season 2 was on Peacock. If you have not caught up with that yet, episodes 1 to 3 are out. So if you would like to jump in so you can know what's going on when that time comes for that recap, I would recommend that you do that now. Let's see. Yeah, so as a lot of you know, I have a gap in between jobs. I've still been doing this. I continue to do this as planned and as scheduled. And what has helped me to be able to still give the same kind of energy towards doing this while not having the easiest time is the fact that I remember when I was working with my life coach and she told me, never do something just because you need money. Like, don't let a desperation for money kind of rule the things that you're doing or influence the things that you're doing. Have those in their own kind of separate departments. So that's kind of what I've done. I've done whatever I need to do to survive in terms of outside of the YouTube platform. And when I get on here, I'm like, I'm not necessarily here for the money. But having said that, I do want to, again, I always say this out loud because I think it's important for the sake of manifesting. I do want this to eventually be a platform that I can delegate daily time towards doing, because I learned this year, well, not this year, I learned last year during the Big Brother season that I am actually capable of going 100 days on this platform in a row. Now, I'm not saying that I have any plan or intent, even if this page were to blow up and have 1 million subscribers or something, I would not be on here 100 days in a row in a year for any particular reason. But I probably would create a schedule where I'm on 5 days a week for however many hours makes sense. I think that would be a good schedule. So basically all I'm asking here for is support if you can. I have my super chats that are open, super thanks, super likes. I have channel memberships. I have my Cash App and PayPal information on the bottom of the screen, which actually gives me more than anything that YouTube gives, because YouTube is Uncle Sam number 1, and then Uncle Sam number 2 is taxes that you receive later on. But if you support my channel, if you support me, if you appreciate the things that I bring to the table, the entertainment, the serious topics, the laughs, I would appreciate the support from you. And if you aren't able to do that, I understand. You can support with the things that are free. You can like this video. You can like other videos that I post on here. You can subscribe to the channel. Definitely on this video, though, if you're viewing this, I would at the very least like you to leave a comment in the comment section regarding something that you like or appreciate about the channel. And that's my speech on that. I guess since I don't have an agenda, I will just go into a little bit about me and what has led me to doing the things that I do on this channel in the first place. So a lot of you know this stuff about me already. If some of you don't, I was born and raised in Canada. I lived in Canada from when I was born up until about 14, 15 years old. So I had my whole elementary school in Canada. I did half of my high school in Canada, 2 years there. I live in New York City now. So the differences between Canada and New York City are massive. First of all, the demographics where I was living. There was not too many Black people where I grew up. For the most part, though, I was a kid, so it's not like I really knew or felt the difference for the most part. There were instances when I clearly felt the difference, but I would say at least 60 to 70% of my childhood, I didn't really feel too much about those differences. I loved it in Canada, though. It was quiet, it was clean, it was safe where I lived. There was not too much to do, but I did have a massive park in my backyard, right in my backyard. So we had a huge soccer field directly behind our fence. I did a video about this actually on my music and mental health page. I showed that area because I went back there and documented it in a where I'm from type of video. And we had a playground and a basketball court and a baseball diamond. All of that was in my area. So I didn't really need a lot of other entertainment because I just had my friends and I had outdoors and I had a lot of things to do outdoors, either by myself or with my friends. It was cold over there. It was definitely cold. When I went back this winter, it was not too cold. It was almost like the same weather that I was experiencing here in New York. And then when I was in high school, my dad got a new job. He got a couple of new jobs. First, he got one in North Carolina. We were supposed to go there. He ended up going there. We never ended up going to North Carolina, but where we did end up going was Massachusetts. I hated Massachusetts, especially compared to where I was living. I just didn't like the state. And we moved into this apartment, and I'm not going to say we had a mansion or anything, but we had a nice house in Canada. And then we moved into this small apartment. It was the first time that I hadn't had a 3-floor place, a basement. I didn't have a washer and dryer in there. I know, first world problem. It's hard to adjust to something like that when that's all you're used to growing up. And then I remember going into the school, believe it or not, well, Massachusetts is right there. It's like we're all in North America. But when I got into school, all the kids made fun of everything. I remember this one time when I raised my hand and I said, "Can I go to the washroom?" And everyone just burst out in laughter. And I was like, I didn't even get the joke. Washroom. And then it was like, oh, the teacher was like, oh, the teacher even chuckled. But the teacher told everyone, oh, that's what they call the restroom or the bathroom in Canada. And I'm like, that's a thing? And then the kids would be like, oh, you're from Canada, eh? Have you seen, did you live in an igloo? Did you play with the polar bears? Hey, Lisa. I was like, I had experienced different forms of bullying before, but this was a new one, like being bullied based on being from a different place. But it wasn't even like, I didn't think that I was going to experience that. I wasn't prepared for that because I'm thinking, oh, it's not like I'm moving to Alaska or I'm going to Australia or something where things are so radically different. But yeah, that was not a fun experience. But eventually I got used to it. I did 2 years there. I lived 2 years there at first, and then I graduated from high school in Massachusetts. I did 1 year of college in Massachusetts, and then I left. I went to this school in Michigan that my whole immediate family went to. My parents met at that school. I graduated from that school in Michigan. I briefly came back to New York. Hey, D. I briefly came back to New York, and then from New York, I went to, let's see. I'm trying to remember the order. I'm getting old. I think that first I went to Massachusetts. I think that I went to Massachusetts first. No, that's not right. I went to Georgia first, and I spent 6 to 8 months or something like that in Georgia. And it was an experience over there. It was kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. Georgia was kind of more rural, somewhat like where I grew up, and the people were friendly, also somewhat like where I grew up. I lived in this subdivision, and I remember when I first came to Georgia from New York, I remember I always tell this story about when you come to New York, especially New York City, because when people who are not from New York, I've had friends tell me, oh, I'm going to be in Buffalo. Let's meet up. And I'm like, I don't know about your geography, but Buffalo is pretty much Canada. I'd be closer to you if I lived in Toronto than if I lived in New York City. New York City is not close to these upstate places in New York. So to clarify, in New York City, you don't make eye contact with people you don't know, and you don't talk to people without reason. I learned that, unless you're my dad, because I remember my dad used to always be like, hey, good morning, how are you? And people would look at him like, oh, you're not from here, not knowing that he actually spent about from 2006 until 2023, what is that, 17, 16 years, almost 16 years of his life here, and people still thought he was a tourist because of the fact that he refused to let go of his politeness. But me, I adapt to the area that I'm in, and as nice as you see me here, and as nice as you might see me in certain work environments, like in a work environment, especially an in-office work environment, because remote Mark is a different person, but an in-office Mark is nicer than the average New Yorker. But anyways, when I walk down the street here, I'm not greeting everybody and I'm not smiling at people. I'm just throwing on my headphones, going about my business and doing my thing. So when I first got to Georgia, I had that New York state of mind with me still. And I remember going into this, I don't know what to call it, but they have these gas stations that are also restaurants. I don't know if any of you are from the South or are just familiar with the South, but every gas station has like a huge store attached to it. So the store, you could get everything in there. You can get your groceries in there. You can get fast food in there. Sometimes you can get hot meals in there, you know. So I went into one of those. We stopped at a gas stop. I don't know why it's okay. It wasn't letting me put up your comment for a second. So we stopped at a gas stop, and I went in and I just wanted to get I think I got a Sprite or something. And then I got a Reese's Pieces. I was just getting a snack while somebody was filling the gas. So I remember I was standing in the line, and then somebody behind me was like, "Oh, so Reese's Pieces, huh? I like to curl up next to the fireplace with a Twix bar, with a nice Twix bar." I'm telling you, when you live in a place for a while, your mind is so in tuned with that place. So my first thought was not, oh, that's interesting, he's making conversation. It was more like, this guy can't be talking to me, because why would he be talking to me? Why is he clocking my purchase? And who asked for his commentary? That's the way that I'm feeling. And then the guy who was scanning my stuff was like, oh, I actually, that's funny. I actually like a Milky Way, but Reese's Pieces are right up there. I have like a fight, flight, or freeze response. I'm like, what do I do when people speak to me like this? I'm not used to this anymore. Even though that's how I grew up, I'm like, now I'm not used to this anymore. I think I just kind of chuckled and scanned my items, paid for them, and went back to the car. And then I remember we lived in this subdivision. And when we would walk outside in the morning, people would be like, "Hi, good morning. How's your day? How's the family doing? How's this? How's that?" Like Southern hospitality, basically. I didn't know anything about Southern hospitality, but I knew that in New York, hospitality is a rare commodity. So it took me a little while to get used to it. But after a while, I was right there with them. I would leave my house. I would say, "Hi, good morning. How are you? How's your day going?" I would talk to people in the store. The thing for me is like, this is not an adjustment in a sense of I've never done it before. It was just an adjustment in a sense of I got so used to New York that now I kind of had that New York mentality in me a little bit, where I just ignore everybody. So leaving for Georgia kind of refreshed my humanity a little bit. Even though I wasn't there for long, it refreshed my humanity 100%. I'm too polite for New York. But the funny thing is, I say that I'm not polite in New York, but that's not what any New Yorker who meets me ever would say to you. If you came here and asked anybody, that's the first adjective they use to describe me anywhere. "Mark, you're so polite. Mark, you're so polite. Mark, you're so polite." But if you see me, they talk about, there's this kind of joke in Canada about when people are walking through the door, when people are holding the doors, they call it a Canadian standoff because nobody wants to go through the door first. If I was in Canada, I would offer to hold the door once. And then if they did not walk through the door, I'd walk through the door. So I say that I'm less polite than the average Canadian, but still way more polite than the average New Yorker, for sure. But then after I left Georgia, it was because I couldn't really find a good job over there. And I came back. I went back to Massachusetts. I stayed with my friend. I spent a year working in a factory doing factory work. I had my college degree, but these were the options that were presented with me at the time. Minimum wage in 2012, I want to say 2012, was about, I think about $7 an hour in 2012. And they had these jobs that were called management trainee jobs. My mom and dad really wanted me to take one of those jobs. And those jobs were the, oh, dress up in a shirt and tie and run around and do errands, staple papers together, send faxes and send emails, whatever you had to do. Basically, office busy work that would pay $8.25 an hour, like an hour and 25, a dollar and 25, sorry, over minimum wage. And I wasn't with it. So as I usually do, just like as I did here, which, you know, as I said in the beginning of this video, has led to me struggling a little bit. But I just kind of tend to feel like your path is your path. I'm not a conventional person who follows exactly the pattern that is set out for me if the pattern doesn't make sense to me. So I thought about end game. In the end, do I want to spend 20 years working my way up the corporate ladder, start pushing papers, and then upgrade to answering phone calls, move up a little bit more, and then move up a little bit more, and then be sitting in the executive suite in my 50s? And the end game of that did not seem worth the beginning. So I had the option of starting off in the lowly position. And when I say that, I don't mean lowly as in, I don't think any job is beneath me. I'll put it like that. But if I'm going to start at the bottom of some job, it's going to be because the top of wherever I'm trying to go is something that I want to achieve. I'm not just going to do something like that if the top of whatever it is not appealing to me, because I'm not somebody who aims to be a little higher than the bottom or in the middle. Like, I want to be up here with whatever I'm doing. That's always my mindset. So I had the choice between the $8.25 an hour jobs, just basically doing whatever. And then there was this factory job that opened up that was paying 11 to 11.50 an hour, which is a big difference from, you know, $8. Yes, it's hard manual labor. I actually remember I went to the job interview and I might have been wearing a suit and tie, but at the very minimum, I was wearing a shirt and tie. And I'm laughing because I'm so different now with life experience than I was at that time in my early 20s. If I wanted to get one of those factory jobs right now, I would just wipe out my whole resume and make a resume that just had a list of retail that I've done, retail stores, factory work, part-time jobs. I would dress down my resume and I wouldn't even put my college degree on the resume, but I put everything on the resume in that case, put my college degree. So I remember sitting in the office with the recruiter, with the hiring manager. I think he was what yesterday's version of a talent acquisition specialist was. I don't think his title was called that, but basically, y'all know what those talent recruitment people do today. He was one of those guys. So I remember sitting in the office in there, dressed up, nice. And he said, "So you have a degree?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "You have a degree in business administration?" I said, "Yes, that's correct." And he said, "You know, this is factory work, right?" "Yep." He's like, "You know that you would have to wear steel toe boots and PPE gear, and you would have to lift things, and you would have to get your clothes dirty, and it's hard manual labor, right? You know that, right?" I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "And you wouldn't be moving up anywhere into administration or anything like that. This is the job, pays this much, you do this type of work. You understand that, right? I'm just making that clear. I was like, yep. And then he was like, how soon can you start? And I said, I can start today. And he was like, well, if you can get yourself some steel toe boots tonight, you can start tomorrow. And that was it. I was right in the factory. That was that was an interesting job. I still have permanent injuries from that job, and I only did it for a year. I only did that job for 1 year, and I have permanent injuries from it. The job was actually an electronics recycling factory. So 10 years ago, oh, it's not even 10 years ago anymore. About 12 years ago, I'm losing count of years. About 12 years ago is when they started doing these recycling initiatives. Like, you used to just throw out your old TV, put it on the side of the road. You used to just get rid of your stuff. And they did not care about recycling. But they started opening up these recycling plants around that time. And the recycling pays. Like, there's whole factories that are just for that. So I remember what would happen is I was on the assembly line, and we would get a big box full of miscellaneous electronics. There were different departments. That was just the department I was placed in. I was on the assembly line. So we would get a box, and the box would have a tag on it, and the tag, you could scan the tag, and the tag would have a number of pounds of stuff in the box. Our quota was a certain number of pounds per day, which fluctuated between 800 to 1,000, which is a lot, because that's you lifting 800 to 1,000 pounds a day. And it might even be more than that. This is just on recall of my memory. But in those boxes would be printers, old printers. It would be Game Boys, like video game systems, laptops, iPads, iPods. You would basically have to sort everything out. The things that you could put in certain piles, like the pile for the wires and the pile for the plastic, you would do that until you fill the box and throw it into this thing called the pit. The pit had those big Bobcat machines. If y'all know what those Bobcat machines are, those are those big yellow machines that people drive. And then they have the shovel type thing at the front of it, and then it would crunch everything together. Then they'd crunch it together and put it in these bales. And the way that I got injured, though, was because we had to dismantle those old Fred Flintstone televisions. Some of y'all will remember those huge wooden televisions that had the knobs on them instead of the buttons. And then they had the rabbit ear antennas, and they had the big inner tube. Those inner tubes were so heavy. Back in those days, you needed the store to actually bring your TV to your house. You were not going to just lift the TV off the shelf and throw the TV in the shopping cart and take it in your car and take it home. Nah, you needed a team to do that, or some really strong individuals to do that. But hey, happy Sunday / MLK weekend / day. You too, Shanna. So it was a process with these big TVs, getting them apart. First, we'd start with the sledgehammer. I kind of liked this at first, but I wish that I hadn't done it in retrospect, because, like I said, now I face permanent injuries. But anyways, you take the sledgehammer, and the wood is just nailed in 4 sides. knock off the side, you knock off the top. So now you have the wood on the floor. You pick up the wood. There's a box for the wood. You throw the wood in the box. And then the next thing is you take the TV and you flip it on its face. And then you take the drill, and there's these brackets that are nailed into the back of the tube. You take out the nails. You take out the nails with the drill. And then there's all these wires in the back. So you cut the wires. You cut all the wires off of the tube. And then you put the wires in the wire box. And then the last part of it, which is the part where everybody hurt themselves, was the actual tube. And the tube was anywhere from like 40 to 100 pounds in some cases. And even the 40 pounds is a lot, especially when the thing is flat on the ground. So they had a rule that nobody followed, of course, that you cannot lift the tube off the ground unless, if it's under 40 pounds, you can lift it by yourself. And if it's over 40 pounds and over, you have to have a partner lift it with you. But the reason nobody waited for a partner to lift it with them is because we all had to reach our quota. And they were always yelling at us about these quotas. You have to reach your quota, blah, 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 quota. So I recall this one day where I had this huge TV. I had dismantled it. I was lifting it. The box that you lift those into was probably about at least 4 feet high. And lifting something that heavy from the ground into the box, extremely difficult. But I was pretty strong. I was really strong at that time, as a matter of fact. I used to lift heavy weights at that point in time because that was my pre-injury body. So I lifted it up and I got it up, and the top of the box was like right here, and I was right here. I was just a few inches below the box. And then I was like, oh, once I got to this point, it was heavy. So I tried to do a maneuver because my arms were kind of giving out. And if you drop one of those things, they have these, I don't know what they're called, but there's these white flakes that were inside of the TV tube that if you drop it, the flakes go all over the air, and it was an emergency. And you had to get the spray bottle and spray it. And everybody had to, well, we all had masks on. So, but anyways, I was like right here. So I thought that I could do this maneuver where instead of lifting it high enough to drop it in the box, I could just take my left hand and just use some force and flip it and get it to land in the box. Dangerous and stupid, but that was what I was thinking at the time. So I had the thing in my hand. I started pushing. I tried to start doing it, and then my wrist just gave out. And it fell on the ground. The flakes started floating all over the air. Everybody's like, oh my God, what happened? And here's my hand just shaking. I had torn some ligaments in my hand. So we had this place called safety manager. We had a safety manager in the building. So I went to the safety manager and I was lifting this TV tube and I was trying to put it in the box, and then my wrist gave out. So he was like, instead of being like, oh, looking at it, it's red and it's bent this way and I can't move it, you would think that he would say, oh, we're sending you to the hospital. Oh no, let's go down to the floor and take you through a series of safety tests. See what you could do. I was like, okay. So I went downstairs. He gave me an ice pack. And then he was like, okay. He brought me a hammer or something. And he's like, let's see you lift the hammer. I tried to grip the hammer, couldn't grip the hammer. Hand was shaking. He was like, okay, here's this small TV. Try to lift it. I'm like, if I can't lift a hammer, what makes you think I'm going to be able to lift a television? But I humored him. Made this attempt to lift the television. Couldn't lift it. hand and fingers still shaking and wrist still swollen. And then he was like, well, it seems like you can't work for the rest of the day, so you should go home, rest, ice, Motrin, and if it still hurts tomorrow, we'll send you to the doctor. And even though I had never been in this position before, I was thinking to myself, I may be young, but I wasn't born yesterday. I am not going to go home with this injury and then come back the next day and say it still hurts. I told the guy, no, we're going to do this protocol. You fill out the injury report and send me to the hospital. And then the hospital tells me what I'll do from there. And when I push the issue and press the issue, then he wrote out the injury report, sent me to the hospital. They did the x-ray. They didn't find anything from the x-ray because it wasn't broken, but they sent me to do an MRI the next day. Did the MRI, results came in, torn ligaments. They said no heavy lifting, no lifting more than 5 pounds. So I thought, great, I'm going to be able to stay home. No, they didn't want me to stay home. So I became the one-handed janitor. They made me do janitor work for 6 months, to which my coworkers said I was lucky. But I'm like, how am I lucky that I have to go for 6 months of physical therapy and I still have to come here and do this janitor work instead of just getting a workers' comp? That I felt like that was petty, really, because I knew other people who got injured at that same job. They were sent home and they didn't have to come home until or unless that injury was better. They probably had 1 or 2 less janitorial staff because of having me there doing it. So after I left that job, I went to another job, which I was doing maintenance. It was kind of interesting. It was a job where they did coating, like paint coating on medical equipment. So I was doing like maintenance in there. I was an assistant to the maintenance guy there. That was also in Massachusetts. Because of anxiety issues that I faced when I first got diagnosed with my anxiety disorder, I was sent home. I came home. And then after I came home to New York, I've been here ever since, actually. That was maybe 2013 or so, 2013 to 2024. I've been here 11 years. I was here on and off in the summer since 2006, but I've been here consistently for the last 11 years. And that's that. And I guess to end this off and to just summarize what led me here. When I first got my mental health diagnosis, I got the runaround because at that point in time, I think that mental health it was way more stigmatized than it is now. And it wasn't even really a big topic, and it was harder to find the help than it is now. And so I went through a big runaround to find the assistance that I need. And a lot of times the professionals that I sought out and the opinions that I got from people did more harm than good. So I said, I want to be somebody who changes the stigmas and educates people and helps people out. I ended up working in the field, in the mental health field, for a number of years, 10 years. I'm still in the mental health field, but just not as a peer counselor anymore. Last year was officially my last year as a peer counselor. So I developed a YouTube page. I've had several YouTube pages over the years, but my first intent from the YouTube page was just to help people with mental health issues. I think that YouTube page wasn't too popular, wasn't too highly viewed. But so then I ended up having a YouTube page where I had this pop culture stuff. I wasn't on there at all. I wasn't speaking to people at all. I just put up different videos of things that were happening in pop culture. And that was a highly viewed page. It had like millions of views. It gave me a pretty decent paycheck for the time, maybe a couple $100 a month passive income from that page, which is way more than what's going on now for me on this page. 201 month. That's hard to do with the YouTube partnership program. People do it, so it's not impossible, but that's hard to do. I can tell you that. After I've had 2 monetized pages with the YouTube partnership program, my music and mental health page became monetized in about November of 2022, and this page became monetized somewhere in the middle of the Big Brother season this year. So it's about September. And sometimes both pages together don't produce me the $100 needed to cross the payment threshold. But yeah, how I ended up doing a page covering reality TV. I always watched reality TV. I never saw myself as somebody who would be on a camera commentating about it. But 2 years ago now, I remember when I just threw on my channel, I threw on my live for the first time, and I was like, let me talk about Big Brother. And I didn't have an agenda. I didn't have any notes. I was just like, I just have a few thoughts about the episode in my head. So let me just jump on here and see what happens. And then I remember I saw the little 1 in the corner, which shows you the amount of viewers. And I was like, oh, there's somebody watching. Now I'm committed. I can't jump off. I wanted to hop off so bad. But I was like, okay, now there would be somebody looking at me, so I don't want to look stupid. So I kept speaking. Then I see it become a 2. That first day, I had about 10 people just randomly find my live somehow and be like, are you going to be on tomorrow? I said, if y'all will be back, I'll be back. The next day, there was about 20. I think by the end of the week, I had a live with about 40 or 50 people. And then at its peak, I have the number somewhere because I used to take screenshots of them, but probably about 430 something at one time. I have not achieved that number since. I think this Big Brother season, there was one live where I had about 104, something like that, which was still an achievement. It wasn't quite mathing the same way that it was last year. But anyways, I enjoy doing this. It's my hobby. It's sometimes it can be my sanity. I appreciate the community that has formed from joining me on these lives all the time. But the whole point of this was just to ask for your support. Once again, that's what I'm going to close with. You could do so with super chats, memberships. My Cash App information is scrolling on the bottom of the screen, as is my PayPal information. Show some love. If you're not able to do that, like, comment, subscribe, drop a comment underneath this video of anything that you appreciate about this channel. And with peace and love, I will talk to all of you in about 2.5 hours from now, as myself and Tasha will be recapping episodes 1 through 3 of The Traitors Season 2. Talk to y'all later.